Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of The Real Show, where we're real people giving you real content on real estate. In tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about steps 7, 8, and 9 in the buying process, which are waiving your conditions, step number 8, the best part of the process, and step number 9, preparing to move. My name's Jordan Rossman. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Alfredo Torres. Alfredo, say hello.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
So, Alfredo, let's get right into the business. So, in step number 6, we talked about putting in an offer. In the last page of that offer, the last couple pages, we talked about what is called the Schedule A. This is where you have all of your clauses and conditions. So, tonight we're going to go through, there's a ton of potential different clauses. Tonight we're going to go through 2 of the most popular clauses that you'll find in an agreement of purchase and sale. Those 2 are your financing clause and your home inspection clause. So typically you'll have an offer that is conditional upon the buyer waiving those 2 clauses. So Alfredo, can you talk to us a little bit about what a financing clause is and what is required before you can actually waive that clause?
Absolutely. So financing clause is basically what happens is when you're pre-approved, you are approved based on your income and your credit. So what is left out is the property itself. So once you actually find that property, what we have to do is we have to submit your pre-approval now asking for a firm approval. So what the lender will do at that time is, well, what happens is I get the offer, I get the MLS listing, and what I do is I submit all that information over to the lender that we're working with. So then what happens, the lender that works with us, they're going to want to review the income document. So that's your pay stub and your job letter. They're going to want to review the information on the property. They're going to review your credit score and your credit history. And once all that is evaluated, they will shoot me the firm approval. Once I have that firm approval, that gives you the opportunity to waive your financing. Now, understand that when you waive your financing, you are agreeing and you are communicating to the seller that your financing is in place and that you can go forward because that financing is secured. So when I say, hey, in the pre-approval stage, when I ask for documents, I do it not because we necessarily need them, but it's great to have them on hand for when this part of the process happens, because we only have a limited time in order to waive for financing. So, and that's how the waiving of financing happens. And so then basically once I get that notification that the application is firm approval, I notify the client and I notify the realtor, and then you can go and proceed with getting those waivers signed off so that you can take it to the next step, which normally is the home inspection. Right, Jordan?
Right. So before we go forward, I think that it's important to define, if you haven't done a deal before, what waiving a condition is. So when you've got your Schedule A and you have your conditions in there, so there will be certain clauses that will stay in there and apply to the deal until the end of until the completion of the transaction. But when you have those conditions, so this deal is conditional upon X, it's up to the buyer typically in most clauses to waive that clause, meaning we are no longer making it conditional on this factor. So once we've gone through the home inspection, the financing clause, we go on to the home inspection. So first of all, what is the point of a home inspection? The point of a home inspection is really to get an idea of, from a structural standpoint, what are you buying? So you see the house, you went and you saw it maybe 1 or 2 showings before you put in that offer. You've seen the house, but what are the things that you need to look at to make sure that you're actually buying something that is in good shape? So the point of a home inspection is not to have the seller fix every little issue. Whether it's a $100,000 house or a $10 million house, there's going to be certain things wrong with the house, and that can be expected. The point of a home inspection is to make sure that you identify and potentially eliminate some of the big ticket fixes. So typically in a home inspection, I tell people to look for 5 sort of red flag items. So the first one is the roof. A roof can typically be one of the bigger expenses. It's something that does have a limited lifespan, whether it's a 15-year shingle, a 20, 30, 50, whatever it is. You want to get an idea of what the lifetime is of the roof, what type of life expectancy you can have. So are you going to have to replace the roof in your first year of owning the house, or do you have another 5 or 10 years? So you want to look at the roof. The next thing to look at is the windows. So if you've got windows that have lost their seal, they're no longer working the way that they should, that's going, especially in the winter, to drive your energy costs up. The cost to heat a house that's letting a lot of heat out through the windows is going to be dramatically more. So windows are another big ticket item that can be very expensive to replace. So that's something that you would like to get a good idea of. Number 3, you want to look at the foundation. So a foundation can perhaps be the most expensive thing to fix if it's in really bad shape. So you'd like your home inspector to make sure that they look in the basement, look at the perimeter of the house. They'll know to do this, but to me, that's one of the biggest red flag items. If there is a foundation issue with the house, it's usually something that's tough to get past. The next thing you want to look at, number 4, is the electrical wiring. So if it's a new house, typically you don't have a problem. In some older houses, there are different types of electrical wiring that, first of all, are sometimes not up to code, and more importantly, there's ones that just aren't safe. So you'd like to get an idea from your home inspector what type of electrical wiring is going through the house, if there are any major concerns with that, because again, that's something that's very expensive to fix. The last thing that I recommend people pay attention to during a home inspection, at the beginning of this, I told you it's not about sweating the small stuff. Having said that, you need to keep tabs of the small stuff. $100 here and $50 there and $20 here can really add up. So while you don't want to make the small stuff a deal breaker, you also want to make sure that you're not getting into a house that has a ton of small things to look at. So the important thing with the home inspection, where it differs from a financing clause, is that where the financing clause, you're really relying on the bank or the lender, whoever you're using, to give you permission to waive that clause. A home inspection is really up to the buyer. You get your information from the home inspector. Typically, they're not supposed to weigh in on their opinion on whether you should move forward or not. They just simply present the facts, and it's up to the buyer to make sure that they're comfortable with that. So this is really during the period of waiving conditions, this is really where you're going to be tested to make a judgment call. Most of the home inspections I go into, they're fine, but it is something, if you're buying something that's going to have $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 of repairs required in the next few years, you need to make sure that you're okay with that. So the home inspection is something that's up to the buyer to waive, and is definitely something we recommend to have in any type of transaction. So real quick, before we get on to step number 8, some of the other clauses that you can expect to see in a Schedule A, some of the conditions. Some deals will be conditional upon the buyer arranging insurance. It's hard to get it done in a deal sometimes, especially in a hot market like this, but there are deals. It's called an SBP, the sale of the purchaser's property. So there are conditions that, this purchase is conditional upon the buyer selling another house. There's many different conditions, but financing and inspection are typically the most common that we see in transactions. So moving on to step number 8, something a little bit more exciting. Once we have waived all of the conditions, we have gone from what's called a conditional deal to a firm deal. So step number 8 is celebrating. Whether you want to be going to the bar and popping champagne, or you'd like to just sit with your spouse and relax, at this point, step number 8 is where you can finally take a deep breath, sit back, relax a little bit. You don't have to look at houses anymore. You don't have to do a home inspection. You don't have to worry so much about the mortgage. Most of the hard work is out of the way. So step number 8 is really take a day or two to just relax. It's a really stressful process for people going and looking at houses, deciding which one is right, making the judgment call on the home inspection, not knowing if the mortgage is going to be approved or not. All of this is a lot of anticipation and anxiety for buyers. So step number 8 is just take a day or two to relax. Don't look at houses anymore. Don't worry about things. Just take some time. Maybe go drive by the house that you just bought and look at the sold sign. And other than that, just enjoy the moment. So that's step number 8. Throughout this process, it's really, people do get a lot of anxiety. It's important to take this time to step back and get a little bit of a refresher, because step number 9 is something that's going to require a little bit more work. So Alfredo, step number 9 is preparing to move. So
That's right.
You've got a little bit of a checklist on a couple things that people should look at when they're preparing to move.
Absolutely. So yeah, after step number 8, where you actually take a break, take a breather, step number 9, you kind of gotta get focused a little bit again. It's nowhere near as intense, but something you want to take into account is, now that everything's in order and you have this period of time till you actually move into your place, you want to get some things in order. You want to make sure that you're contacting your personal contacts, relatives, friends, employers, schools if you have kids. You want to contact healthcare professionals, your doctor, your dentist, veterinarians if you have pets. You want to reach out over to the government, whether it's CRA or CPP, depending what life cycle you're in, credit card companies, utilities. If you have a subscription, I have a subscription to TVIN. I get a box of tea every month. It's kind of great. But if I moved and I didn't tell them, somebody would be getting my box of tea, which I would not like. So make sure that you communicate out, let everybody know that you're moving, give them the updated information so that when you get there, everything's transferred over. You also want to take care of moving itself. Are you going to move everything on your own? Do you need to get a moving party together, call out everybody with their trucks, or the backbone that's going to carry all the weight? Are you going to use a moving company? That could be a benefit too. And when you move, you also want to have everything in order. You want to box everything, allocate certain boxes, label your boxes, make your move easy. It doesn't need to be stressful unless you want it to be, and you have this time to prepare it, to put everything in place. So that's something that you should really take advantage of, and not wait till the last minute, because then it gets stressful.
Right. So real quick, Alfredo, we actually got a question from the audience here on YouTube. The question is that during the home inspection part of the deal, is there a limitation in terms of what's required to leave the deal because of something you found in the home inspection? The answer is that depends on how the clause is written. Typically, in our market, the way that the clause is written on the home inspection is that the home inspection, the buyers receive a report satisfactory to the buyer in the buyer's sole and absolute discretion. So that sole and absolute discretion is really the part that is important from a buyer's perspective, which means that the answer to the question is no. If that's the way your clause is written, then it doesn't matter. It can be something that's a $20 fix or something that's a $10,000 fix. You don't have to justify what that is. If you're not comfortable with the house for whatever reason, then you do, in that particular case, have the option to walk away from the deal. So having said that, there are agents who do write clauses, and it does differ from deal to deal. There are clauses where if there's something that the buyer finds wrong, the seller will have the opportunity to fix it, or there's ones where they can walk away on their sole and absolute discretion. So that's the answer to the question. So back to the tips on, when it comes to preparing to move, those are great. One of our pro tip for tonight is make sure that you do this stuff with give yourself some time. All these tips are great that Alfredo gave, but you want to make sure that you're not leaving that to the last day. It can get pretty stressful setting all those up.
Absolutely. And it's a nightmare, because then your mind's scrambled and you're just trying to get everything done. So be prepared.
So So I just want to give a quick shout out. Alfredo and I have been receiving some great feedback from you guys, whether it's via email or in person, people who have watched us live, people who have seen the recorded videos. By the way, if you are watching this live, all of our videos are recorded and are automatically uploaded to our YouTube channel. So make sure you check those out. But we just want to say thank you. We've been getting a lot of great feedback on the show. People have been learning a lot from it. We're super excited. We've been talking. We're actually going to be meeting tomorrow, Alfredo and I, to discuss some awesome ideas for episodes coming up. Next week, we're actually going to be having a guest appearance. So we will be adding somebody to the show that is not Alfredo and I, which is super exciting. And will help us take a really deep dive on one of the final stages of the buying process.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting. So once again, thank you. We're so grateful for those that are watching, and for whoever you want to share this information with or these videos with. We definitely appreciate you, and we're going to keep bringing you great content. And next week will be very special with our special guest.
We love you guys.
Aww.
Take care. We'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye, guys.